that are required and all that. And it's not only a question of whose ox gets gored. If the climate warming goes through, as the models indicate, everybody's ox will get gored.
Sure.
Everybody. But that's long run.
Right.
That's long run. People don't live tomorrow. People live today. And, well, consider that it looks like, what's the word I'm going to say? China's going to eat our lunch in terms of environmental equipment. What are the things we need to cut down on carbon dioxide? I forget whether it was A, B, C, what I said in there. You're going to need things like solar power. You're going to need things like wind power. You're going to need things like water power. The governor of Michigan has been talking and talking and talking about we should build wind equipment here. We should build solar equipment here, etc. Now, once upon a time, the United States was a leader in those things. Now, as I understand the data, China has moved to be #1 in building solar cells, and it's not yet #1 in building wind turbines. China's not holding a gun at our heads and saying, you shall not build these things. Why don't we build these things? Now you're getting beyond my pay grade. This is his business, the political scientist or the anthropologist. Why is it that the executives at BP can see tomorrow, but the guy who works for BP can't see tomorrow? And then, of course, the next question is, why is it that even the executives for BP can't see the day after tomorrow? Because these changes are the day after. We're talking about 80 years for the 2 degrees. Whereas BP and companies see profits for the next quarter and the next couple of years. But the thing that disturbs me most is not the behavior of BP and its like. That's not what disturbs me. What disturbs me is ordinary Joe Public, whose ox is very obviously going to be gored. I guess what I'm trying to say is, who is going to vote for Proposition 23 in California? It's ordinary Joe voter. Now, we are supposedly the most educated population in the world, and yet our Joe voter falls for the bucks. If you put on $3 worth of advertisement, and I put on $2 worth of advertisement, you win. Why is that? That's your question.
Two hopefully brief points. One, I think the skeptics don't have to disprove global warming, they only have to create doubt. And two, skeptics will often, as you said, argue that warming, if there is warming, it's natural. And then the argument seems to flow that we don't have to do anything because it's natural. But all those bad effects will still happen even if it is natural.
Right.
We're not off the hook if it is natural, even though the skeptics seem to argue that we are off the hook.
Well, even if we're natural, we still would have to try to do something to save the populations.
Yeah, right.
But I didn't get to this point, because here I'll talk about who I think the skeptics are. In the history of the United States, in our folklore at least, there's always been a tension between what I'll call rampant individualism and collectivism. You know, you have the cowboy protecting his interests with his 6-gun versus you have the community coming together for barn raising. There's always been a tension there. The fact remains that any one of the things we do in terms of global climate, whether we just try to alleviate the damage, you know, there's nothing we can do to stop it, but at least we can move people away from danger. Or maybe there is something we can do to stop it. Either way, you can't do that on an individual basis. And so what you're seeing, basically, I use the word right and left not because of which side of the French Parliament you originally sat on, but basically individualism versus collectivism, if you will. As I said, we've always fluctuated back and forth between them, and what you have right now is an extreme emphasis on individualism. A word which they don't use is anarchism. You won't find the Tea Party using the word anarchism for themselves. But how else? It's a very accurate description. We can do all right without any government at all. We can do all right purely individually. Collectivism is communism. Communism is bad. You see the same thing in other science-based disputes of the past. Tobacco. The science of the results of smoking were clear, but you had the same attacks on the science by the same people. Global warming, nuclear winter, same kind of attacks. Asbestos, fluoride of the water, and on.
Ozone.
Ozone, yeah. Ozone. Now, the ozone is the one good thing we've seen so far. It was a successful treaty, and it's paying off. It's the one sign that the international community can actually do something positive. Sad that it's good that that's accomplished. It's bad that it's the only thing that's been accomplished. Where was I? Carol.
Well, some people now with whom I generally don't agree are opposed to the size of government and to the spending because they don't want to pass the debt on to their grandchildren.
What kind of debt?
Well, if we could get them to not want to pass the flooding of low-lying areas and all the rest of the things onto their grandchildren, if somehow we could make that transition in terms of climate change that many of them are now making in terms of the debt and the deficits, maybe we could take a step forward.
Well, that's a point I bring up in my class. Coal is cheap. Everybody talks about coal is the cheapest form of energy we have. Yes and no. Depends how you count the costs. What do the economists talk about? Deferred costs or externalities. When they talk about the cheapness of coal, they don't include the poisons that enter the coal miners' lungs. They don't include the air and water pollution in the vicinity of the coal mines, and they don't include getting rid of the ashes safely. None of that's included.
In addition, acidic rain because of sulfur dioxide. Sulfur is in the iron ore, in the coal. When they burn it, it produces sulfur dioxide,
Sure.
more oxygen, sulfur dioxide, coming water, sulfuric acid.
Okay. That's the old acid rain business.
Yeah, acid rain business.
So the point what you're saying, Carol, is perfectly spot on. We have not been able to persuade Americans, either ordinary Americans or business Americans, to take full account of the costs of their actions. We get by on today's costs and we don't worry about tomorrow's costs. It's the old Egyptian adage that you find it written in the pyramids, you know, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow will be dead. And who cares about it?
Barry has a question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the what is to be done question at a much more local level. Here at Wayne State, my dream would be for you to be giving this kind of talk, or anybody to be giving this kind of talk in one of the big auditoriums in the undergrad library or something, and have it be full of faculty and students. So I want to invite you or anybody here really to reflect on what can we do